What's up guys, Fire here with my top 5 mid laners for patch 4.10. Now this patch has seen quite a shift mainly because of this and because of this. Now with those two annoying ass champs finally out of the way, here are my top 5 champions right now to carry with from mid lane. So at number 5 we have Orianna, and you'll probably be surprised as to why she isn't higher considering she's been in the meta for so long. The main reason is because she's more of a utility mage rather than a full out damage source, meaning that others can carry harder, especially in the mid game. Now you do have a lot of damage if you get ahead. She has a great AoE ultimate, really good utility in her speed buff and her shield, and she also has a pretty good lane phase too. Orianna's biggest weaknesses really are her lack of damage early game, so if an early dragon fight breaks out, her reliance on her ultimate and her lack of mobility. Now always getting off a perfect ultimate and never getting caught are really hard to do, but are kind of the two ways that you're going to carry on Ori, and so that's why she isn't higher on this list. Now really, if you can stay safe and always hit that good ult, then you'll always stand a good chance of winning the game. So you'll probably be building the same items every game, mainly because she is so mana hungry and Athene's kind of solves that. My 3 biggest tips for Ori are to poke in lane with your QW combo. Remember to shield yourself when you're trading auto attacks, as even though your autos will do more damage, you'll still be taking a lot of minion damage too. Finally, in team fights, it's often a good idea to try and get your ultimate off slightly after the fight starts. When a fight breaks out, it's so hard for the enemy to keep track of your ball that it will mean that you can get an ultimate off much easier than you would otherwise. So next up on my list is Yasuo, or Yasuo, however you want to say it. Now this is probably one of the riskiest picks that I'm going to suggest to you guys, but this guy can literally carry a game by himself and destroy it if you're really good with him. He's like Vayne in a lot of ways. He's not the strongest in lane, and if you don't know how to play him, you'll probably feed, but if you're good with him, then you'll constantly shove that sword where the sun don't shine. So what makes him good? Well, he scales really hard with only a few items, so even if you get camped, even if their jungler watches Foxtrot's videos and he decides to set up a tent in your lane, you'll still be strong once you get those items. Not only will you be strong, but you'll be able to wreck teamfights with your ult, and the best thing is that you just keep getting stronger the later the game goes. Your win wall is a unique mechanic and is a great way of protecting your team or winning duels, and the mobility your E gives you makes outplaying people pretty easy. Item wise, I can't really think of any situation where you wouldn't want to get a static shiv first, because it's just everything you want. After that, you do have a few choices though. Now, Blade the Ruined King will let you duel people, Infinity Edge will make your team fight even better, and Last Whisper will let you deal with tanks. Honestly, you'll probably actually want to get all 3 of these items at some point, but the order is going to change and that's what matters. So tips wise, Yasuo's early lane phase isn't too strong, so you can kind of counteract this by focusing on pushing early with your E, especially if their jungler is skill shot based. Now what I mean is, like, if you're against an Elise, you can win wall her E and you're in no danger at all. If however you're against a Xin who will just run through your wall, then you need to be way more careful about when you push. Another thing is that if people on your team can set your ult up, then just constantly spam your R when they're about to do it so you don't miss it. Yeah, I know this sounds really dumb, but honestly so many people miss their ults because they aren't ready, and excuses just don't win you games. I feel like I need a drum roll or something for this one. For the first time ever, Kassadin is on my top 5, but he isn't number 1. Now Cass got hit pretty hard with his rework, but honestly he is still really strong and he is still ban worthy. The difference now, and the reason why he's not further up, is because you can actually shut this guy down now in lane, and he needs more items to dominate the game than before. It's not like before where you could get camped, finish your Rod of Ages and it's game over. You at least need 2 or 3 items now before you start spanking people, and those items are harder to get with a harder lane phase. Cass is actually probably better against mages than he was before, but he's a lot worse against AD lanes like Yasuo or Zed. He still brings a lot of mobility, a ton of roam potential, a really strong late game carry, and he can build differently depending on what he's against, which is pretty good too. I know I've listed a lot of bad things about why Cass isn't first, but he's still number 3 on this list because once he starts to snowball, he's going to keep going and probably just win the game. Now these are two examples of what I mean about different item builds. Now the first is pretty standard against another AP laner like Orianna or Fizz. The second is when you're against a heavy AD team. Now Tabby, Frozen Fist and Zhonya's will make you literally unkillable, and if you can get to those items then it'll be pretty hard to lose the game. The biggest three things to focus on are farming, roaming and more roaming. Kassadin's lane phase is nowhere near as strong now, so if you want the items you'll need to win the game, you're going to have to roam around the map and get kills to pay for them. Remember when you do roam to have your ult on the first mana cost tier before you jump in. Now if you riff walk the entire way down to bot lane from mid lane, then the mana cost will be too high for you to actually jump in when you get there, and you'll be surprised at how many players I see running down only to find out they can't do anything. The other thing to think about in lane is the balance between trading and farming with your Q. Now you don't want to be a punk and let the enemy bully you, but at the same time you want to make sure that you hit as much farm as possible. Now at number 2 we have League's very own farm simulator in Ziggs. Now this guy will make any game that should be a 20-minute stomp into at least 40 minutes just because of his wave clear. So Ziggs has a great laning phase, great teamfight damage, great zone control, huge burst and insane wave clear. You've probably all watched at least one LCS game where Ziggs' team will make a comeback purely because their enemy team can't push and use the advantage that they have. Now this is why he's so good. Not only can he carry himself, but he can give his team time to come back into the game. The biggest problem Ziggs has is that all of his skills are skill shots, and so if you have a rough game and you miss everything, you're going to do literally no damage. Now Ziggs, as I'm making this video, is floating around a 55% win rate in solo queue, which is one of the highest out of every champion. Now this is someone who is pretty easy to play, deals tons of damage and is just perfect in this current meta of objective control. If you're looking to play someone who is hardly ever banned but is borderline overpowered, then this is your guy. You'll probably be building exactly the same every game apart from an early Zhonya's when against an AD lane, and this is when you can either opt for a tier or an Athene's. So tip number 1, farm everything. The more items you have, the easier it will be to carry your team, and believe me, you can carry pretty bad people with Ziggs. Number 2, most people won't expect you to try and kill them early, so you can use this to your advantage. Your passive auto and Q combo does a lot of damage in the early levels and you can easily sneak a kill in. Now number 3, late game use your W and E to peel while using your Q and ultimate to destroy their back line. Now even if you get dived on by a bruiser, it's rarely ever a good idea to ult on top of yourself to kill the tank. Now 90% of the time you'll want to just ignore him and ult the AD or the AP carry at the back of the fight, and yeah, you might die but you'll win the fight. Now I cannot believe I'm actually going to say this, but my number 1 is Kayle. Now Shakarez, or you might know him as Kaylebot, must be the happiest guy in the world right now because Kayle is easily the strongest champion in the game. Now she's sporting the highest win rate in the game, and to put that into perspective, back when Kassadin was broken, he used to have a very similar win rate to Kayle does now. Now Kayle has a ton of damage, her ultimate is really strong at every stage in the game, and she scales so well with items that it means she can snowball really hard if she gets fed early. She even has her heal, which isn't great, but it lets her sustain in lane and protect her teammates mid to late game as well. The thing that makes Kayle so strong right now is really the build and her E. Now her E shreds enemy resistances, which means that not only is she attacking everyone with Runans, but she's making her team hit them even harder as well. Now there are 2 real builds that I think you can go on Kayle. So the first is the Korean Runans build, which is what most people are using right now. The other is more of an AP heavy build that focuses on bursting one person rather than dealing huge AoE damage. So the biggest 3 things to focus on when you're learning to play Kayle is knowing when and who to ult in teamfights, baiting people with your ultimate, and making sure you farm properly while using your E. Now these are things that come with time and experience of playing Kayle, but honestly the best person to watch to learn how to play Kayle is my friend Shakarez. If you want to learn how to play Kayle and get some free elo right now, then I suggest you go and watch some of his videos, and I'll pop a link for that down below. Now the last 2 mid laners that I want to mention are Xerath and Syndra. Now these are both pretty underrated, especially Xerath, and can easily both carry solo queue. They kind of carry in different ways. Syndra can carry by demolishing her lane and then instantly killing people, whereas Xerath kind of prefers to slowly kill you instead. His poke is ridiculous, making it really hard to defend towers against him and even push against him as well. Now these two could easily replace Orianna on this list and are definitely worth playing if you fancy something different.